Uh, Recording this on a MacBook in my living room is not how I imagined accepting this fellowship, but coronavirus prevents me from being there in person, so I have to give my speech this way. Um, I'd really like to thank the team at Writers Victoria for administering this award and for being such tireless champions of Australian writers. I'd also like to thank the Rowley family, in particular Hazel's sister, Della, who sits on the fellowship committee with Lynn Buchanan, John Murphy, and Irene Tomaszewski. Thanks so much to all of you. My thanks to this year's judges, Della, Lynn, Jenny Hocking, and Jeff Sparrow. There were 8 other finalists, and all of them are working on such amazing projects that I'm truly humbled to be selected. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge Hazel herself for being something of a trailblazer and an inspiration to me. A few years ago, I set out to sell my first book in the UK, and my agent met with some unexpected resistance. Certain editors questioned whether an Australian was really capable of writing about a British institution like Savile Row. This shocked me at the time because I think we like to believe that colonial condescension is a thing of the past, yet there it was. Hazel was born in London, but she was brought up in Adelaide. And as a biographer, she wrote about people from all walks of life, from Christina Stead to Sartre to Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. Her interests were voracious, her research was deep, and her output was uniformly brilliant. Writers like Hazel give courage to writers like me. I grew up in the Hunter Valley, where there are more coal mines than bookstores. Courage that an Australian can indeed go abroad and say something meaningful about Savile Row or an American literary titan, provided we're willing to put in the work, which is, in the end, the only thing that really matters. The subject of the book that I'm currently working on, Peter Matthiessen, understood this almost too well. He was a workaholic. Over the course of a 60-year career, Peter earned a reputation as a man of formidable abilities and of various sometimes contradictory personas. He was a naturalist, a fisherman, an ornithologist, a cryptozoologist. He was a social activist for marginalized and indigenous people. He was co-founder of the Paris Review, which he created in the early 1950s to cover his activities in the fledgling CIA. He wrote one of the inciting texts of the modern environmental movement, Wildlife in America, and he charted blank spots on the World Atlas as a fearless, or foolhardy, some would say, explorer. He produced strange, genre-defying fictions, and he was an early practitioner of the non-fiction novel inspiring Truman Capote. He remains the only American to have ever won the National Book Award for both fiction and non-fiction. I first learned about Peter several years ago when a friend gave me a beaten-up copy of The Snow Leopard. The book was written as a journal, and it covers the 1973 expedition that he made with a field biologist named George Shallow in the Himalayas. George had gone to Nepal to study the elusive blue sheep. Peter, however, had gone for more complicated reasons. His wife had died of cancer the year before, and in the aftermath, he'd fallen hard for Zen Buddhism. In Kathmandu, just before he set out with George to walk 250 miles to a place called the Crystal Mountain, a man asked him what he was hoping to find there. Peter shrugged uncomfortably, and this is what he writes in The Snow Leopard. To say I was interested in the blue sheep or snow leopards or even in remote lamassaries was no answer to his question, though all of that was true. To say I was making a pilgrimage seemed fatuous and vague, though in some sense that was true as well. And so I admitted that I did not know. How could I say that I wished to penetrate the secrets of the mountains in search of something still unknown that might well be missed for the very fact of searching? The first time I read The Snow Leopard, I was astounded by the book. Peter seemed to be writing with precision and clarity about subjects I felt but found impossible to articulate. Here was a hard-nosed scientist committed to collecting empirical data. Yet he was a man who also believed that science had its limitations, that there were mysteries which exceeded our ability to quantify them. For much of his life, Peter Matthiessen was both a scientist and a mystic, a poet-scientist. In fact, his lifelong quest to understand his own self, his true nature, led him to adapt the language of science to speak unsentimentally about spirituality and the sublime. My book, which is called True Nature, The Pilgrimage of Peter Matthiessen, will explore how he got to that point and where he went after that walk in the Himalayas, which came roughly halfway through his life. Receiving this fellowship allows me to do more than just archival research. I want to write a book that's not just a traditional biography, that is something else, something more. So for that purposes, I'm traveling to Balian Valley in Papua in a few months, and in September I'll be retracing much of the Snow Leopard trek to the Crystal Mountains in Nepal. My book will visit some of the landscapes, people, and animals that he wrote about so eloquently to assess their current status. How has the world changed since one of our greatest nature writers set out to apprehend it? That's what I want to answer with this book. So the Hazel Rowley Literary Fellowship makes it possible, and I'm eternally grateful, so thank you so much.